Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive into speaking English like a pro. We've got a ton of insights from communication experts, and we're going to break it all down for you.
That's right. We're going to uncover the secrets to speaking English confidently and fluently.
Yeah, no matter your level right now, we'll equip you with actionable steps and some mindset shifts you can make to boost your fluency.
Get ready for some aha moments.
Exactly. We're going to debunk some myths about language learning. Like, did you know that talking to yourself can be a really powerful learning tool?
And obsessing over grammar might actually be holding you back.
So let's dive into it, starting with the elephant in the room, fear.
Oh, yeah. Fear is a big one.
We all experience it, that feeling of freezing up,
Right. Worried about sounding silly.
making mistakes.
Exactly. And that's totally natural.
One of the articles we dug into, Unlocking Fluency, the mindset of a successful language learner, really gets into the psychology of this fear.
Yeah. It's fascinating stuff.
It's so relatable. You start to overthink
You
things.
get caught up in your head. And it just paralyzes you.
The article calls it the perfectionism paradox.
Right. And it makes the point that expecting to speak perfectly from day one is kind of like...
Like expecting to run a marathon without ever having jogged around the block.
Exactly.
And it's funny, if you look at how kids learn languages,
Yeah.
they're masters at making mistakes. They're constantly making mistakes.
It's true.
They babble, they mispronounce words, they even invent their own words.
I've heard my niece do that.
And that's exactly how they learn.
You've got me thinking. It's like we need to unlearn some of that adult perfectionism.
Right. We need to embrace those messy moments.
Instead of seeing mistakes as failure.
What if we see them as stepping stones?
Exactly. Each mistake is an opportunity to learn.
It's valuable data. It shows you where you need to focus your attention.
So how do we actually do that? How do we shift our mindset to embrace those moments?
One technique I really like comes from the book Fluent Forever by Gabriel Weiner. He calls it comfort zone stretching.
Okay, I like that.
The idea is to start with small steps.
Tiny steps.
Like maybe saying a simple phrase to yourself in the mirror.
And then gradually increasing the difficulty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like leveling up in a video game.
You wouldn't go straight to the final boss battle without mastering the basic moves.
Right. Each time you push yourself a little beyond your comfort zone.
You build resilience.
And confidence.
Okay, so we've talked about mindset. Now let's get into some practical techniques.
Sounds good.
Another source we have, The Ultimate Guide to Language Immersion at Home, talks about the power of daily listening.
This is crucial.
It's about training your ears.
Right. The more you hear natural English spoken,
The more you'll internalize the rhythm,
the intonation,
all those subtle nuances.
it's like training your ear to decode the music of the language.
I love that analogy. But the guide also mentions something interesting.
What's that?
It cautions against passive listening.
Ah, yes. You can't just have Netflix on in the background.
And expect to absorb it all.
It's about active, engaged listening.
Right.
Choose something you enjoy.
Like a TV show, a podcast.
And really tune in.
Be present with it.
Here's a hack they recommend.
Okay, I'm listening.
Watch something with subtitles first.
To understand the gist,
Then watch it again without subtitles.
focusing on the sounds.
How the words are pronounced.
You'd be surprised how much more you pick up the second time around.
It's like your brain's making connections it didn't have time for before.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're actively listening. We're embracing mistakes.
What's next in our toolkit?
The guide also mentions a technique called shadowing.
Oh, yes. Shadowing is fantastic.
I'm curious to hear your take on it.
Imagine having a pronunciation coach whispering in your ear.
Oh, okay, I'm picturing it.
You listen to a sentence.
And then
You immediately repeat it, trying to match the speaker's every inflection.
it's like becoming a vocal chameleon.
Exactly.
I actually tried this with TED Talks.
Oh, cool. How'd it go?
It was surprisingly effective. Not just for pronunciation.
But for rhythm and flow, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You internalize the natural cadence of spoken English. So you don't sound like a robot reading from a textbook.
Which is what we want to avoid.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got immersive listening and shadowing. What about speaking practice?
Good question.
Some people might be thinking, I don't have anyone to practice with.
That's a common concern.
But one of our more surprising sources,
Which one is that?
an article called The Unexpected Power of Talking to Yourself, suggests that self-talk is a great way to practice.
It might sound silly at first,
I know, right?
but it's incredibly effective.
You can do it anywhere, anytime.
Without judgment.
Imagine you're cooking dinner.
Okay.
Describe what you're doing in English out loud.
Now I'm chopping the vegetables.
I'm going to add some spices.
Exactly.
It might feel a bit strange at first.
But the benefits are huge.
You build confidence.
You improve fluency.
And most importantly, you get used to thinking in English.
It's like a dress rehearsal for real conversations.
But let's be real. Sometimes even when we think we're speaking correctly,
Yeah.
I can sound a bit stiff.
A bit too textbook.
Another source we found beyond textbook English tackles a big misconception.
What's that?
That mastering grammar is the key to speaking fluently.
Ah, yes. That's a common myth.
So are we saying grammar doesn't matter at all?
Not quite. Grammar is important. It's the framework,
Okay.
but it's not the whole picture.
So it's not just about memorizing rules.
Exactly. Think about it. Young kids don't start speaking by memorizing grammar rules.
Right.
They learn through imitation, by picking up phrases and patterns.
It's like learning to play the piano.
Exactly.
You don't start by analyzing every note on the scale.
You start by learning chords and melodies.
So instead of getting bogged down in the past, perfect, continuous,
Focus on phrases like, could you help me? Or, that sounds fantastic.
practical phrases.
Everyday language.
Okay, so we're prioritizing those over complex grammar rules. But how do we actually find those phrases?
This is where your interests come in.
Okay.
Are you passionate about cooking?
I love to cook.
Find recipes in English. Love music.
Music is my love.
Listen to English songs and try to decipher the lyrics.
It's about making learning fun.
Exactly. Find content that excites you.
Make it a joy, not a chore.
And as you immerse yourself in real-world English,
You'll naturally start picking up those usable phrases and expressions.
it's like osmosis.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about mindset, immersive listening, shadowing self-talk, and focusing on functional language.
It's a lot.
But there's more to come in our next segment.
What are we diving into next?
We'll explore finding your tribe, tracking your progress, and most importantly, making sure you're having fun along the way.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
So let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
So, we've talked about all these tools and techniques,
Right?
but I think it all comes back to something even more fundamental.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What's that?
Active listening and observation.
Okay.
It's about shifting from just passively absorbing information
Right.
to really engaging with the nuances of spoken English.
So, be more mindful.
Exactly. Think of yourself as a language detective.
Interesting.
Every conversation, every movie, every podcast,
It all becomes an opportunity to learn.
to uncover clues about how English works in the real world.
So instead of just watching a movie for the plot,
Right.
I should be paying attention to how the characters speak.
Exactly. Notice their rhythm, their pauses,
The way they emphasize certain words.
their body language too.
Yeah.
It all adds up to create meaning.
Wow. It's like there's this whole hidden layer of communication.
And the more you practice this active observation,
The more you pick up on those subtle cues,
exactly, those nuances become second nature to you.
so you start to use them in your own speech without even thinking about it.
Right. It's about moving beyond simple imitation
Developing your own unique voice.
within the framework of the language.
That's a great point. And it reminds me of another technique we haven't really touched on yet,
What's that?
paraphrasing.
Oh, yes. Paraphrasing is so powerful.
One of our sources, Unlocking Fluency, really emphasized this.
It's essentially expressing the same idea using different words and sentence structures.
So like a mental workout for your vocabulary.
Exactly. Let's say you're trying to describe a delicious meal,
Okay.
but you can't quite find the right word.
Happens to me all the time.
Instead of getting stuck,
You rephrase the sentence.
all right, you could say, it was so flavorful I couldn't stop eating it.
Or the combination of flavors was incredibly balanced and satisfying.
Exactly.
It's about being flexible.
Finding different ways to express yourself.
And I guess the more you practice paraphrasing,
The more agile your mind becomes.
you start to see connections between words and concepts that you didn't notice before,
It's like building a mental map of the language.
with multiple routes to the same destination.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've talked about general techniques. Now let's get into some specific resources,
Sure. What kind of resources are you thinking about?
like movies, podcasts, websites, apps.
Okay, I got some great recommendations.
I'm all ears.
For classic films with clear and engaging dialogue.
You can't go wrong with Casablanca.
It's a timeless
And
masterpiece.
with memorable lines you'll find yourself quoting.
Here's looking at you, kid.
Exactly. What about podcasts?
For a mix of storytelling and thought-provoking content.
I love This American Life.
It's produced by NPR. They feature a wide range of voices and perspectives.
And the stories are always so captivating.
If you're into science and storytelling,
Audiolab. is amazing.
They have this really unique way of blending sound and narrative.
And for something a bit lighter,
Stuff You Should Know is a fun one. They cover a huge variety of topics.
in a really accessible and humorous way.
We can't forget about online platforms either.
Right. There's a whole world of resources out there.
For structured learning,
Babbel and Duolingo are popular choices.
they offer gamified lessons and personalized learning paths.
And for those who are ready to connect with native speakers,
HelloTalk and Tandem are great for language exchange. You can find language partners from all over the world
it's a great way to practice your speaking skills.
and learn about different cultures.
And of course, there's YouTube.
So many amazing channels dedicated to teaching English.
Everything from grammar explanations to pronunciation tips to cultural insights.
It's incredible how much is available for free.
Speaking of connection, I think it's important to talk about the social aspect of language learning.
Absolutely.
Finding your tribe can make all the difference.
It's so true. Surrounding yourself with a supportive community.
Can provide motivation, accountability, a sense of belonging.
So where can people find these communities?
Online communities and forums are a great place to start.
Facebook groups, Reddit discussions, language exchange apps,
It's about finding a space where you feel comfortable practicing,
making mistakes.
sharing your journey with others who understand.
And don't forget about celebrating your own progress.
That's so important. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget to acknowledge how far you've come.
That's why tracking your progress is so crucial.
One of our sources recommends recording yourself speaking at regular intervals.
It's amazing to hear the difference over time.
It's like looking back at old photos and seeing how much you've changed.
And when you feel discouraged,
Just remind yourself of all the progress you've made.
it's a testament to your dedication and perseverance.
So we've talked about resources, communities, the importance of tracking progress.
What else is there?
Well, amidst all the techniques and strategies.
We can't forget about one crucial ingredient:
What's that?
enjoyment,
Yes. Learning a language should be a rewarding experience.
not a chore.
It's about finding the joy in the process.
The aha moment.
The connections you make with other cultures.
Choose content that interests you.
Topics that spark your curiosity.
Make it a personal journey of discovery.
I remember
Every step you take,
every word you learn.
every conversation you have
It's all bringing you closer to your goal.
of speaking English like a pro.
Before we move on,
Sure.
I think we need to address something that often holds learners back.
What's that?
The fear of making mistakes.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
We touched on it earlier.
But it deserves a deeper dive.
It's so understandable why people are afraid to make mistakes,
We're conditioned to believe that mistakes are bad.
that they reflect poorly on us.
But what if we challenge that belief?
What if we see mistakes as opportunities for growth?
Exactly. Mistakes are feedback.
They're like a compass guiding us in the right direction.
Every time you stumble,
You learn something new.
you identify areas where you need to improve.
So embrace those mistakes.
See them as valuable lessons.
And remember, everyone makes mistakes.
Even native speakers.
It's part of the human experience.
It's an essential part of the learning process.
So how can we practically overcome this fear?
One way is to create a safe space for practice.
Like finding a language partner or a group of friends who are also learning.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment where you feel comfortable experimenting.
Without judgment.
And remember, the more you practice,
The less scary it becomes.
it's like anything else.
The more you do it, the easier it gets.
As you gain confidence, you'll find yourself taking more risks,
Trying new things.
pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
And that's where the real magic happens.
So embrace those mistakes, learn from them, and keep moving forward.
Okay, now let's shift gears and talk about something a bit more technical.
Okay, I'm ready.
Ugh.
What do you have in mind?
Pronunciation.
Ah, yes,
Yeah.
pronunciation is crucial.
It can be challenging.
Many learners struggle with specific sounds or intonation.
So how can we improve our pronunciation?
One of our sources, Fluent Forever, recommends focusing on the International Phonetic Alphabet.
The IPA. That sounds a bit intimidating.
I know, it might seem that way.
But is it really necessary?
It's a really useful tool.
How so?
It provides a visual representation of every sound in English.
So instead of guessing how a word is pronounced
You could look it up in the IPA chart.
and know exactly how it should sound.
It takes away the ambiguity.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually practice those sounds?
There are lots of resources available online and in apps.
Like pronunciation drills and tongue twisters.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to exaggerate the sounds at first.
It's about training your mouth muscles.
They produce the correct shapes.
It's like going to the gym for your tongue.
And just like with any physical exercise,
Consistency is key.
even a few minutes of practice each day can make a big difference.
So we don't have to spend hours and hours on it.
And remember, it's not about achieving perfection.
It's about making progress.
Don't get discouraged if you don't sound like a native speaker overnight.
It's a journey.
Not a destination.
Well said. Okay, let's move on to our final segment.
What are we talking about next?
Finding your voice and building confidence in your spoken English.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive. Mindset shifts, practical techniques.
Finding your tribe.
Right. Now it's time to bring it all together.
Yeah. We've given you a toolbox full of strategies, but what really matters is what you do with them.
Right. It's about using these tools to build your own unique voice.
Exactly. It's not about trying to sound like someone else.
It's about expressing yourself authentically in English.
And that's where confidence comes in.
So how do we go from feeling unsure and hesitant to speaking with confidence and fluency?
Well, one of the key takeaways from Fluent Forever is that confidence comes from repetition.
From practice.
Exactly.
Right.
The more we use English, the more comfortable we become.
Makes sense. It's like learning to ride a bike.
At first, it feels wobbly and scary.
But with practice, you develop muscle memory.
Balance.
And eventually, you don't even have to think about it. You just ride.
And that's the goal with spoken English, to reach a point where the words flow naturally.
But getting to that point takes time and effort.
Of course, there's no magic bullet.
No shortcut to fluency.
But there are ways to make the journey more enjoyable and effective.
Like what?
One of the most powerful strategies is setting realistic goals.
So instead of aiming for perfection,
Right. Focus on making small improvements.
break down your learning into manageable steps.
And celebrate those milestones along the way.
It's like climbing a mountain.
You don't reach the summit in one giant leap.
You take it one step at a time.
And remember, it's not a race.
Everyone learns at their own pace.
Be patient with yourself. Don't compare your progress to others.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to experiment.
Try new things.
Step outside your comfort zone.
See what works best for you.
The world of English learning is so vast and diverse.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
So explore different resources.
Experiment with different techniques.
Find what resonates with you.
Learning a language isn't just about acquiring a skill.
It's about so much more than that.
It's about expanding your horizons,
Connecting with new cultures.
broadening your perspective on the world,
It's about unlocking new possibilities.
both personally and professionally.
And ultimately becoming a more confident and empowered communicator.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay, I'm all ears.
The journey of language learning. It's a lifelong adventure.
So we should never stop exploring.
Never stop learning.
Never stop growing.
The world is full of fascinating people and cultures waiting to be discovered.
And being able to speak English fluently opens up a world of possibilities.
So embrace the challenge, enjoy the journey, and never give up on your dream.
So we've reached the end of our deep dive into speaking English like a pro, but this is really just the beginning.
The tools and techniques we've talked about today, they're just a starting point.
It's up to you to put them into practice.
And make them your own.
So what's one action you can take today to kickstart your English speaking journey?
Could you watch a short video in English?
Listen to a podcast.
Maybe practice some self-talk for a few minutes.
Every small step counts. And remember, the world of English learning is vast and exciting. Keep experimenting, stay curious, and never stop exploring.
Until next time, happy learning.
Bye, everyone.